Thank you, everybody, for being here. Still a few seats left if you want to make yourself comfortable. Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun to revisit all these things that I used to do for 20 years on pretty much on a daily basis. But it's basically the kind of thing that became integral in me in my quest to become an actor. Tell you the truth, I was more successful in doing this kind of stuff than having an acting career. But doing these things helped me really get a practical, hands-on feeling for Shakespeare. First time I had to deal with Shakespeare was in 6th grade, and teacher plopped The Merchant in Venice of us, and he said to read Act 1, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then we looked at it. And no, I just checked out. And it was the same thing through high school and even through my undergraduate career, where I have to read Shakespeare again. Okay, I'd read it, but it may as well have been Greek. And it wasn't until graduate school when I started to learn about using scansion and looking at imagery and looking at Shakespeare's verse gave me clues as to what was really going on. There were so many words I didn't understand, but once I learned to look at the verse and see where the stresses were, things started to click. And I was able to access the rhythms of the meter and see the way that the words came alive through my being, as opposed to me just trying to understand it intellectually. So this is a process that I like I say, embodied, embraced, and really used. And now I know I wasn't expecting that everybody was familiar with Shakespeare. I would expect that you all understand what iambic pentameter is and what blank verse means. This is all the basic things that are on this first handout here. But am I right that we understand blank verse and iambic pentameter?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's why I'm checking, because I don't want to be like the dead horses. We can move on. Okay, we can count to 10. The analogy that I like to use in dealing with understanding Shakespeare's work and verse is to make an analogy between a composer and writing a symphony, and the way that each instrument plays certain notes, and all of the notes are there as part of a big conglomerate. We can break down the verse. Okay, so iambic pentameter is basically the idea of a 10-syllable line, a decasyllabic line, and they are broken up into what we call feet. So each decasyllabic line would be 10 syllables of 2 beats. Okay, and iambic is the term for the metrical pattern of unstressed and stressed. So a line of blank verse would be da 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 da. Left my Shakespeare voice at home today. I still speak iambic pentameter. Okay, and iambic pentameter is the way that we speak in our normal 10-syllable society.
In English, yeah.
And it's the most natural to us. So that's why he uses it, I believe. So the I am is unstressed and stressed. Then there are times when there are other metrical forms, like the reverse of the I am is the trochee, which is stressed, unstressed. And there are times when the verse changes, or where you can choose to change a certain portion of the line when it's appropriate. And there are certain clues that Shakespeare gives us where we can do that. But I really want to, so we understand basically what that idea of iambic pentameter is, 10 syllables in line. Okay. Shakespeare doesn't write in all blank verse. There are variations of it, and he also writes in prose. The difference between prose and verse is first in the way that it looks. The way that it looks is like if you're reading a poem, you can see how each line starts with a capital letter, and that's the way his verse is printed out. But when it comes to the prose, it looks like prose, not like prose profession. Prose, it looks like a paragraph, like you were reading a newspaper. And generally, basically, the lower class characters, they are written in prose form, and the more noble characters are written in verse form. Now, nothing is certain. There's no like definite, noble characters sometimes will speak in prose and sometimes vice versa. But we're going to focus on the verse. I've got some examples of some ways that we can look at the sounds, the consonants and the vowels of the lines that will help us, like I said, say it, hear it, and see it. And I don't mean just see it with your eyes. I mean, when you see, you have like a vision, and it's an experience. But if I'm going to go down these particular tools, as I like to call them, or toys might even be a better way, is the consonant sounds are divided into different categories. The first one that I want to talk about is called a plosive sound. Okay, plosive. What does plosive sound like to you? The word plosive. Explosion. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's explosive. These are explosive sounds, and there are 6 of them that are used often by everybody all the time. P, B, T, D, K, and G. Pa, ba, ta, da, ka, ga. Repeat after me. Pa, ba, ta, da, ka. When you say each one, feel what you need to do to make that sound. We'll just do with it. We'll just start with the P one. Okay, it's the most frontally placed sound. It comes just with the closing of your lips, and fill your mouth with air, and you go. Pa. Pa. I'm over exaggerating it just to make a fool of myself. Pa. Ba. Ta. Da. Ka. Ga. And if this were an actual voice class, you'd all be lying on the floor, deep breathing and vibrating all kinds of stuff. So the explosive sounds are hard sounds that are very impactful. Okay. See, there are some other ones I'm not really going to go into later, but I have them written down here. Now, going along with the plosive sounds are what's called fricative sounds. And those are sounds that don't completely stop the flow of air, but they alter the flow of air, and through our articulators, through the lips, teeth, the tongue, we find ways to let the air flow. And those would be like F, the F word, okay, J, J, L, R. Pirates in, pirates in. R. I use that a lot in high school teaching. Shh, which never worked. You shut the front door, would you? And also V and Z. So each of those has like an aspirant quality to it. Okay, so you have the explosive sounds and the softer fricative sound. M and N are something that they call like nasal stops or nasal occlusives. And right, they vibrate M or N, and it's more of a vibration, but the flow there isn't stopped, so they categorize it as a rhythm. So those are basically the differences between the consonants in a couple of categories. And then you've got the vowels, the A, E, I, O, U, I, A, E, O, U. And again, you would be lying on the floor going, I, E, O, U. It would sound like a transcendental meditation class or something. And you would advance to the fifth dimension. Shakespeare gives us vowels, and as an actor, sometimes you read the script and like there's just an O. Shakespeare gave me an O. Oh, or it could be O, or you could really milk it and you could go, oh, get real dramatic, make the play last longer. But they do the same kind of things. And however these syllables get put together, creates an image in your mind. It creates a vibration. All of these sounds create vibrations that have an effect on us. And back before we had words, we just had sounds. We just would go, oh. 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 And eventually we developed the language into words. Well, just those primitive moanings and gruntings and grumblings meant something to those people. Oh. We understood each other, and it's just been more advanced, and until this next generation came along, and the whole language is being destroyed right now. So God rest languages. Don't be afraid to milk the vowels, and as you would be reading a part, it's a good idea and a fun idea to really over accentuate each syllable so you get a feeling. You can over accentuate the syllable so you get a feeling. And I'm saying the same thing, but I'm over accentuating so that I can get a feel of the flow of air and the vibration that it elicits inside of me. And those vibrations that I'm feeling are carried through the air, and they run across the auditorium, and they jump into people's ears and into their eardrums, and it creates more vibrations. And it becomes a psychological, physiological combination that elicits an emotion. In the same way, like you listen to choral music. Lately, I discovered Luz Eterna, and which is mostly a choral, beautiful, spiritual piece of music. And even though it was written in Latin, it's all these beautiful voices, and I'm listening to it for the first time, and I'm sitting there crying. I don't know what they're singing about, but something about these sounds are stimulating my emotions. And I'm, oh my God, it's so beautiful. So Shakespeare does the same things to us. when we add the visual imagery that he gives us, and plus with the movements and the expressions of the actors and their reactions to each other. Even though we don't understand the words, it's a foreign language, it's English. It's a foreign language, but somehow, if you watch Hamlet, you've never read it before, but if you go and you see it being performed, you somehow understand it. And it's magical. It's something 400 years old that speaks to us today. The ideas are all very relevant to things that we all experience as human beings. So on the handout here, I'm down toward the bottom of the first page of it, if you're following along. There's the example of verse. See where it says the taming of the shrew, Biondello. This is what prose looks like. Biondello is one of the servants, and he just comes in and speaks. Why Petruchio is coming in a new hat and an old jerkin, a pair of old breeches thrice turned, a pair of boots that have been camel cases, etc. There's no distinct verse form or metrical patterns. The next one down at the very bottom of the page is my first example of some lines from Shakespeare. And these are from Love's Labour's Lost to King Ferdinand. And this is here to demonstrate to people who don't know how to count syllables. Okay? When I was doing it in high school, I guess elementary school kids are taught to clap your hands to count the syllables. Well, what if you have no rhythm? What if you're like 1, 2, like me? No musical sense whatsoever. So here's the best way to do it. Every time your jaw goes down, that's a syllable. So take your palm, back your hand, put down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 7 is 2 syllables. Did you get that? So counting to 10 has a feminine name. We'll get to the feminine. Okay, so this is probably the best way I've ever found to say woo. There's now. Okay. Let fame that all hunt after in their lives. The fame that all hunt after in their lives. 10 syllables. So what we would do is the best thing to do when you're doing this scoring is to use a pencil because it gets messy. And on the next page, we've got some examples here. Okay, we talked about, blank verse, I should say this. Blank verse means that the lines of the poem or the dialogue, the monologue, okay, they just don't rhyme. A lot of times the very last 2 lines of a scene will rhyme. And that is a signal to the actors off stage when they hear the rhyming couplet. That's a signal to them that the scene is over and the next scene is going to start. But there are some of his monologues, especially this one, Helena. Everything is written in rhyming couplets. Every other line rhymes with one another. So if you understand like the poem structure, like 2 lines, AA rhyme, BB rhyme. Here's the way that you would score your role here. It says MSND to Helena. Okay. And the U is the unstressed line of the IM, and the slash or the backslash or whatever that thing's called is the stress one. So Helena says, love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. Okay, so I'm going to over accentuate the line. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. And therefore is winged Cupid painted blind.
Much prettier.
Yes, you're hearing, Shakespeare is writing the notes so that you hear the stressed words, and those are the important words that you need to understand it. So you really only have to read half of the play. That's just a joke. I'm reading every other syllable. Okay, so looks with eyes, with mind. There is winged Cupid, paint blind. And the unstressed words are like not, the, with, there, for, it, those things. So as you're scoring the role, this idea is scansion, this technique is scansion, or this tool is scansion, or scanning the role, or scoring the role. I've heard it, both of those terms, so they are synonymous as far as I know. All right, so now down here, about halfway down, an alteration to the 10 beat line is there are lots and lots of 11 beat lines. And those are called feminine endings. Okay? When you have ta-da, 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 ta. The feminine ending is there to give the actor an option. And you don't have to take it, but sometimes the next line after a feminine ending, it's effective, not required, it's not a rule, sometimes it's just plain old wrong, is to invert that first foot. So it's ta, da, da, ta. And then it goes back to the da, ta, da, ta, da. So let's look at this famous line. To be or not to be, that is the quest. Be, not be is quest. And the unstressed lines are to or to that the, un. You see that? You see what he does there? Okay, so with the 11 syllable line, and I didn't do this, I didn't write it this way or make this up, but it's called the feminine ending because it's weak. Okay, look at that. All the feminists now are looking at me. We're under arrest. I apologize for that. So looking down here, here's where that feminine ending can indicate that the next foot of the ensuing line invert. Okay, so to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. All right. Okay, so the term, the first line, the first word of the next line is whether. When you ask a question, that what word usually gets, what are you talking about? Who did that? Where are my glasses? Can't find my golf ball on my nose. So those types of things, this one is written in here for. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is, whether. Hear how I'm putting the accent on that first, or the stress on that first syllable. Okay. That's something to look for. And when we get to the monologues and scenes that I've got for you, you'll be able to pick those out, and you could decide, well, is this a place where it would be effective or proper to invert that line, or should I just stay with the iambic? There are other, and to use the trope. There are some other verse forms, Alexandrines, and things like that, but they are very They aren't used very often, but they are there. So when you're counting the lines or the syllables of a line, if you come up with a 9 line, or if it goes to 12, don't worry about it. Sometimes a line will have 9 syllables, and somewhere in that line, either at the beginning or the end, it's a written in pause. So to be or not to be, that is the quest. But he gives you places to pause and let something sink in, or maybe there's a piece of action that draws the attention, that is supposed to draw the attention. Oh, here's the Alexandrian from Macbeth. If you read Macbeth, don't expect there to be able to find perfect verse form. It's one of his later plays, and I think he was just starting to say, "Oh heck, I don't need to always write in these verses. I don't have to improve the university wits anymore. I'm successful. I can create my own art form. But mine eyes are made the fools for the other senses." That's a 12 syllable line. See where it says in Macbeth, Act 2, Scene 2. Okay, but in the examples I've got here, the Ulysses speech, his degree speech, I think the Troilus and Cressida, it's full of the Alexandrine lines, and many times I've been told and have found is that the 12-beat Alexandrine line is a highly elevated verse form and when it's used, it is a highly noble, inspired statement. That is the significance. It's probably the better way. It's a very significant and spiritually inspired, noble statement. Another thing that's tricky here, down towards the bottom of page 3, is when a line of verse can be shared by 2 people. The line can be broken in half. Okay, so here's a from Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet with Benvolio and Romeo. Benvolio starts off and he's got 5 syllables. Good morrow, cousin. Romeo says, is the day so young? Good morrow, cousin. Is the day so young? That's 1 line. But news struck 9. I mean, and sad hours seem long for lovesick little puppy. Okay, so sometimes those lines, one will end like it is halfway here, and sometimes, in fact, I think most of the time, it's printed with the continuation of the line farther over on the page. Okay, I've done it here. But sometimes I've seen it written where it isn't. And so that can throw you. And on to page 4 here, sometimes there's a hidden syllable. Okay, that sneaky Shakespeare guy, he's hiding the Easter eggs under the bush there, and no one can see him. All right, so this little line here, this is from Henry VI, part 1. A messenger says, no treachery, but want of men and money. Among the soldiers, this is much. That's just one example. There's another one follows it here. If you look at those lines, no treachery, but want of men and money. Among the soldiers, this is muttered. Is that 9? See the 9? Among the soldiers, this is muttered. Okay, see where I am? Okay, so that's 9 lines, right? Okay. So what he does sometimes is, or what the actor needs to do sometimes, is to add that syllable. And in this case, I've seen this written with an accent over it, but it would be spoken among the soldiers. This is muttered. The second one, which is back up the page, the Dauphin Charles is crowned king in Reims. The dolphin Charles is crowned king in Reims. Can you count those? See how the one way it's 9, and the other way, if you add the accent over the ed, it becomes the decasyllable. We talked about the stress, how the placement of the words and the stress of the words in the second part of the I am. Romeo and Juliet. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Okay, much do hate, more love. As opposed to, here's to with, but with. You see that the active, the real, the meat of the idea is in the stressed syllables. Is this making sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it news to anyone? All right, good. Well, good. Here's one of my favorite scenes of all time from the first meeting between Petruccio and Kate. That first scene. This line is from that. You lie in faith, for you are called plain Kate. Lie, faith, you called Kate. She wanted to be. She says something like, they call me Catherine, that do speak of me. You said, no, you're not Catherine. You're just Kate. Plain old Kate. Kate the Cursed. One thing that you'll notice is his use of pronouns. Generally, pronouns aren't in a stressed position. When one is put in that stressed position, it's really important. It would really be I or you. See up here, Kate. Petruccio says to Kate, "You lie in faith, for you are called plain Kate." See, that's where when I see I've got a pronoun in the stress position, I know that I'm going to say you. Down the bottom of the page, we've got some that we were kind of talking about at the beginning of the class before it actually started and all its formalities, about alliteration and onomatopoeia. Okay. This is one of my favorite speeches of all times. Here is from Henry VI, Part 3, Clifford, and he uses both alliteration and onomatopoeia in the same line. Okay. Do you understand what alliteration is?
Yeah.
Alliteration is the repeated use of the beginning sound. Okay. There's alliterations, there's consonants and consonants.
Excellent.
Yes. Okay. So, who scapes the lurking serpent's mortal sting? So here, in this little line, he gives us 5. Those are 5 scapes, serpents, sting. 5 of the syllables, or the S sound is used 5 times. Okay, now, if you had a pet snake and you were talking to your snake and you said, "Hey, snake, how you doing today?" What would your snake say back to you? Okay, all right. You'd have to interpret what he wants for breakfast, but okay. So that's the use of alliteration, but onomatopoeia means that the word sounds like what it means. So sting, scapes, serpents, honest officer. Are we getting? Shut up, Haun. You talk too much.
I think it's very interesting.
Okay. I'm doing okay. Okay, okay, so the last page here, so just in conclusion, just kind of winding these things up. Sounds are sensory vibrations that connect the physiological with the psychological and elicit emotions. That's the last chapter of the murder mystery. Okay, that's who done it. Okay, and theatrically, if we go back to primitive rituals, shamans dancing around the fire, those sounds and movements all have meanings, and adding the visual imagery just reinforces feelings that are coming across in the structure of the words. So that's the spiel. Okay, that's the left brain. Okay, these are the tools. Okay, these are the concrete things that you've got to work with. Yes.
So if there's an actor preparing for a play, do they have to manually write all those notes in, or can you find certain copies where it kind of has those keys?
I've never seen those cheats. I've never seen them. It doesn't have to, but it's a good tool. Yeah. We were taught to do it, and we would sit like I was going to have us do it. Well, that's now it's mine.
Okay, so Thomas Ryan did it, 3 or 4 kids.
Okay, it's okay. All right, it's gonna be all right. The next thing would be I have some handouts with the monologues on them, and what we can do is we can just go through like a line or two